3 minutes before midnight, my phone rang, and suddenly nothing in my life made sense. The caller ID showed my wife's name, but the voice on the other end was unfamiliar. It was a nurse from the hospital where my wife had been admitted for the past week. She told me that my wife had asked to see me urgently. As I rushed to the hospital, my mind was filled with questions. What could be wrong? Was she okay? When I arrived, the nurse handed me a stack of papers. "Your wife asked me to give these to you," she said. I looked at the papers and saw that they were divorce papers. My heart sank. Why would my wife want a divorce now, of all times? I felt betrayed and confused. The nurse saw the look on my face and said, "There's something else." She handed me a bunch of letters. "Your wife wrote these every night," she said. "She wanted you to have them." I took the letters, and as I began to read, I realized that my wife had been hiding a secret from me. A secret that would change our lives forever. As I read through the letters, I discovered that my wife had been feeling unhappy in our marriage for a long time. She felt like we had grown apart and that I was no longer the man she fell in love with. She wrote about how she had tried to talk to me about it, but I never listened. I was too busy with work and didn't have time for her. She felt lonely and unloved. I felt a pang of guilt as I read her words. I had been so caught up in my own world that I had neglected my wife's needs. I realized that I had taken her for granted. The letters also revealed that she had met someone else, someone who listened to her and made her feel loved. I felt a surge of anger and jealousy. Who was this person? Why had my wife turned to them? I wanted to know more, but the letters didn't reveal much. I decided to investigate further. I started by asking the nurse if she knew anything about the person my wife had met. She seemed hesitant to talk, but I could tell that she knew something. "Please," I said. "I need to know the truth." She looked around nervously and then leaned in close. "I don't know if I should be telling you this," she said. "But I think you have a right to know." The nurse told me that my wife had met a doctor at the hospital. His name was Dr. Lee, and he had been treating my wife for her illness. The nurse said that they had grown close, and my wife had confided in him about her unhappiness in our marriage. Dr. Lee had listened to her and offered her support. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, jealousy, and sadness. I couldn't believe that my wife had turned to someone else for comfort. I wanted to confront Dr. Lee, but the nurse advised me against it. "He's a good man," she said. "He didn't mean to hurt you or your wife." I wasn't sure what to believe. I decided to do some digging on my own. I started by looking into Dr. Lee's background. I discovered that he was a kind and compassionate doctor, well respected by his colleagues and patients. I also found out that he was married, but his wife had passed away a few years ago. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for him. Maybe he wasn't the villain I had made him out to be. I decided to meet with him and talk things through. I wanted to know why he had gotten involved with my wife, and what his intentions were. As I waited for him to arrive, I felt a sense of trepidation. What would he say? Would he apologize or justify his actions? I took a deep breath and steeled myself for the conversation ahead. Dr. Lee arrived, and we sat down to talk. I asked him about his relationship with my wife, and he explained that he had gotten to know her while treating her. He said that they had bonded over their shared experiences and that he had fallen in love with her. I listened to his words, trying to understand his perspective. He seemed genuinely sorry for the pain he had caused me, and he assured me that he had never intended to hurt me or my wife. I believed him, but I was still hurt and angry. I asked him why he had pursued a relationship with my wife, knowing that she was married. He said that he had tried to resist his feelings, but he couldn't help the way he felt. He loved my wife, and he wanted to be with her. I felt a pang of sadness as I realized that my marriage was truly over. My wife had moved on, and I needed to accept that. I looked at Dr. Lee, and I saw a man who was genuinely in love with my wife. I realized that I had been given a second chance, a chance to start anew and find happiness again. I stood up, and Dr. Lee stood up with me. We shook hands, and I wished him and my wife all the best. As I walked out of the hospital, I felt a sense of closure and a newfound sense of hope. I knew that I would be okay, and that I would find love again. In the end, I learned a valuable lesson about the importance of communication and trust in a relationship. I realized that I had taken my wife for granted and that I had neglected her needs. I was grateful for the experience, as it had taught me to appreciate the people in my life and to never take them for granted. I also learned to forgive and to let go of the past. I wished my wife and Dr. Lee all the best, and I moved on with my life. I started to focus on myself and my own happiness. I took up new hobbies, made new friends, and started to see the world in a new light. I was grateful for the second chance that I had been given, and I was determined to make the most of it. As I looked back on my experience, I realized that sometimes, things have to fall apart before they can come together again. And I was grateful for the journey, no matter how difficult it had been.